Thank you, Mario. Clive, I'm going to start with a very general question for you, really. It's a huge commitment to take on this kind of role, this kind of project. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came to you and what it was that made you want to take it on?
I knew Stephen Soderbergh sort of socially. I've never worked with him. He called me up. I was shooting something and said, I've found this script. I love it. I think I want to make 10 hours of television out of it. Have a read of it and let me know what you think. I wasn't looking to commit to a character for that length of time or to do a television show, but 45 minutes later, I knew I would be doing it. It was a wildly exciting piece of writing. It was, you know, I knew a little bit about the world of medicine at this period because I did this tiny British film called Century a number of years ago and knew that this was a really crucial, intense time in the world of medicine. But I just never read a period piece like it or a character like it. It was so kind of dangerous and wild and original. And he was such a complicated but exciting character to play. The idea of navigating your way through a television series playing a character that was, you know, on the one hand brilliant and a genius, but on the other deeply flawed, drug addict, arrogant, kind of difficult. And racist, yeah, but I mean, there's been an awful lot of talk about that, but that, you know, the whole series has been incredibly well researched, and there were no black doctors working in any hospital in New York at that time, only in Negro infirmaries, and it's a wonderful opportunity to look at that issue, that social theme of that time in New York. And I just, you know, I got on the phone with Stephen and the two writers, and they explained to me the journey of where it was going, and then I realised it gets even wilder than the original. And, you know, to be honest with you, whether it had been a movie, a play, you know, 25-hour television, I would have done it. It was just one of them. Their flaws and their fallibilities and their, you know, and that then becomes really exciting to sort of play that balance, to try and take people on the story and on the journey, but also be challenging with it.
Bene, prima di scatenare le domande volevo chiedere a Andrea Scrosati se ci dava delle indicazioni più generali della programmazione di quanto sarà accessibile per l'ampio pubblico e anche all'interno delle strategie, soprattutto credo del nuovo canale Atlantic, cosa ha significato scegliere una serie come questa?
Allora, la serie va in onda dall'11 novembre in prime time su Sky Atlantic, ovviamente sarà disponibile in tutte le metodologie che mettiamo a disposizione, quindi on demand, su Sky Go, esattamente poi questo è il modo in cui credo chi ama davvero le serie preferisce consumarle, no? Magari potendone vedere 4-5 puntate una dopo l'altra. Io credo che The Knick, come molti dei prodotti fatti da HBO, sono esattamente il tipo di serie che noi vogliamo vedere su questo canale. Credo che il ruolo che un canale come Sky Atlantic, e in particolare come Sky, ha su questo tipo di linguaggio è quello di poter mandare in onda tutto ciò che ha un elemento di forte sperimentazione e discontinuità con diciamo, il linguaggio comune, che non ha, dove sono prodotti che non hanno paura di andare oltre rispetto a quello che viene considerato il limite accettabile, non, diciamo, molto spesso da un approccio abbastanza conservatore a prescindere, no? Questa è una serie che per esempio è un prodotto che racconta in maniera realistica come avveniva la medicina in quegli anni ed è l'unico modo in cui si poteva raccontare, se si voleva raccontare fino in fondo.
Well, first off, I think that, you know, the reason that probably hospital dramas have always been so popular and have produced such amazing characters is that the stakes are very high. It's life and death. And we are, you know, we're talking in this period, you know, a really wild, incredible time in medicine where they were making huge advancements very quickly and discovering things that we still benefit from today. But it was very much a case of sort of shooting from the hip. They were trying things out in the hope of learning things which would then, you know, forward and help everybody. And that kind of, for me, redeems everything that Thackeray does, because, you know, although he's difficult and complex and arrogant and all those other things, he is also brilliant at what he does, and he's unorthodox, he's a risk taker, he's somebody that, you know, he could very well make discoveries that a huge amount of people will benefit enormously from, and he stops at nothing to get there. And, you know, it wouldn't be as interesting if he was just the most brilliant doctor but a terribly nice guy with it. You know, often people who are brilliant and that committed, you know, are driven people, you know, and it's not, they can't be perfect at everything. So that's the first one. What's the second one? It was,
come reputa il mestiere dell'attore?
Yeah, I mean, I trained in the theatre. I was lucky enough to go to the Royal Academy and did 3 years of training, and all I wanted to do when I started acting was theatre, really. Then things opened up for me, and I landed, you know, a pretty big TV show in the UK, and the whole television thing opened, and then the film thing sort of opened up as well, and I feel I've been incredibly fortunate, and I approach all mediums the same way, really. I would attack a part, whether it's for theatre, television or film, in exactly the same way.
La noia essere definito un sex symbol anche da molte attrici americane, non soltanto da coloro che pagano un biglietto oppure guardano la TV per vederla. Grazie.
I don't really think about it that much, to tell you the truth. I don't consider myself to be, and I don't spend much time. I think it would be a very scary thing if I sat here thinking I am the sex symbol.
Allora, salve, Roberto Refrigio, Corriere del Cinema. Invece la cosa che mi ha colpito tantissimo è l'altissima qualità, cioè come è stato girato, le scene assolutamente realistiche. Quindi la mia domanda sincera invece è come si è trovato veramente sporco di sangue a lavorare tutto quanto sul set, perché vedo che tutto ruota perfettamente. Ho visto solo i primi 2 episodi, ma è tutto perfetto, quindi è una cosa mi ha veramente lasciato estasiato, questo è il termine esatto.
Well, you have to give an enormous amount of credit to Steven Soderbergh for the way that he shot it. I mean, the guy does everything. He operates, he lights, he directs, and he edits. And we shot at a really fast pace. But you know, when I saw it for the first time projected, I was completely bowled over by how beautiful it looked. And you know, he has to take enormous credit for that. He also has an incredible team around him. A lot of these people have worked with him many times, and the set designer is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, those sets were so substantial and detailed and beautiful. You'd go into the pathology lab, you'd open a drawer, and it would be full of period instruments, and I mean, they felt like they were living, breathing sets. They weren't sort of just shallow, you know. They were really, really rich and beautiful. And he'd worked with Ellen, the costume designer, and all of that was done really beautifully. And when you're doing a thing like this, it's a support. You walk into a room that feels that substantial and feels that grounded, and it grounds everything that you're doing. And you know, so yeah, I thought that they achieved something really, really beautiful.
You are a doctor, and you are a brilliant doctor. How do you manage the brilliance and the genius of medicine with this drugs addiction, I mean cocaine addiction? Was it hard for you to play this role?
Well, my character's inspired by a real doctor, a guy called William Halsted, and there was an incredible book written called Genius on the Edge. And William Halsted worked at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in New York at the turn of the century, was considered one of the foremost doctors of his time, and was consuming vast amounts of drugs while being brilliant, and that was kind of the inspiration for Thackeray. Drug addiction is a very different thing then. Cocaine wasn't illegal, and it took 10 years for them to make cocaine legal. They thought it was the new wonder drug. They thought it was a great anesthetic, and doctors got addicted to it, people got addicted to it, and it took them a number of years to realise that there were problems that came with it. So it's a very different kind of world of addiction at that time. But the challenge, but also what was so exciting about that, is that for me to play a drug addict who was brilliant, is that there's always more than one thing going on in every scene. That every scene, I had a visual wall chart of every episode and every scene that monitored my drug intake. Was I on drugs? Had I taken too many? Did I need drugs? Because that's the life he's leading. The first 2 scenes you see of him, he's waking up from an opium stupor and then injecting himself with liquid cocaine, and that's his kind of rhythm. And every scene has to be fueled with where he is on that intake. And what that means is you've got this beautifully written script with very complex relationships and drama, and then you add this huge dimension, which his equilibrium is also completely askew to everybody else's all the time. And it was both challenging, but hugely exciting, because in every single scene there's always an awful lot to do.
Quindi forse la vera domanda è quanta cocaina avete dovuto assumere per fare questo?
I acted everything. I was a huge fan of, I thought The Great Beauty was the best film of last year, so...
Paolo Sorrentino.
Yeah, and I love that movie, so yeah, that would be my first choice.
Ce ne sono qui 2.
Clive, you said this kind of came out of left field. You hadn't done a lot of series television. We're finding in the States that series television is becoming a lot more interesting than studio film work. I'm wondering if that's your opinion as well, and do you see yourself, are you going to be looking harder now at series television and cable?
I think television is hugely exciting at the moment, and I think first and foremost you get directors and actors go where good writing is. Stephen announced he's retiring from making films, and 3 weeks later commits to making 10 hours of television because this script set him alight. And he said, if I didn't do it, I knew the next director who read it would. And I was exactly the same with it from an acting point of view. I wasn't looking to do 10 hours of television, but there was no way I was going to walk away from writing that good and a part that good. And I think there's an awful lot of great writing. I think it's probably because you get time, you can really explore themes and characters and dig deep. You can also be maybe more dangerous because you're not trying to wrap everything up into something that is a 90-minute, 2-hour format that you've then got to fight in the marketplace and give a position. You can take your time and do things that that maybe you couldn't do in a film, and take more risks. And I think it's it's a very exciting time. I did a lot of television when I was younger, and to be honest with you, I'm not a great fan of playing a part for too long, and I haven't been, because I think you can reveal too much. I base my career on trying to keep it as mixed and varied as I can, and not to do the same thing. I don't consider that with this. There was no risk or element of me doubting this because it was such an extraordinary piece, and it was with Steven Soderbergh, who's one of the great filmmakers, and I would have committed to however long, however long it would have been, I would have done this, because it was just a part I couldn't turn down. You come across scripts as an actor, and I've only had a handful in my whole career, where it kind of galvanizes you and reminds you why you do what you do. Everything comes together, and it's kind of, this is why I do what I do, is to get the opportunity to do parts like this. And I think it is a very exciting time. So, I'm led by material and directors, and whatever medium that is, it really doesn't matter to me. In terms of the second, yes, the great news is that Stephen's coming back and they're going to direct all 10, and we start shooting next January, February. And what's really exciting is, it goes to some pretty wild places, this series, and as the story develops, some of it is really kind of wild. And the idea that we can pick up and not have to spend time establishing everything and hit the ground running, and is really, really exciting. Just to see how far we can take it is really thrilling. In terms of getting ready for it, I did a lot of reading beforehand of the period and about doctors at this time and all of that. And then there was this brilliant medical historian, archivist called Dr. Burns, who literally has hundreds of thousands of photographs from the turn of the century of operations. He has booklets that doctors handed amongst themselves. He has original medical instruments, and he was an incredible sort of source for all of the operations and anything medical. And we're working at a very fast pace, and there's no way in the time that we had that I could, learn enough to be totally convincing. But most of what you see in the series, if not all of it, there is practically no CGI. And again, it's credit to Stephen. He just shoots everything so cleverly that you feel satisfied and you see what we're doing, but we're never revealed to be actors. He's just very, very intelligent about where he puts the camera, and all of the operations are shot differently, so we never sort of repeat them. And we had this doctor there, and you would just learn. He would talk you through the operation, tell you what you do, and then you just try and do your best. But I didn't have time to go to medical school, so.